Thank you, everyone, for giving me the opportunity to have a great conversation with two wonderful entrepreneurs and inventors. And so it is my pleasure to introduce two of our entrepreneurs today in our Finding Innovation panel. We're going to have a great discussion about who they are, some of the different things that they've worked on, and the great businesses that they've developed, and talking about their IP journey. And so let's meet our first panel member, and that is Georgia Grace. Georgia has invented a patented zipper technology product, and she has started her company called SheFly. And SheFly's patented zipper technology has been recognized as a 2022 Outside Business Journal Top 50 product, as well as a 2022 Outdoor Retailer Innovation Awards finalist and a 2021 Top Diamond Award winner in the Mass Challenge Accelerator. So, Georgia, welcome to this particular panel. So there tends to be a fear in taking the step to move forward with going all in. What was your career before you started this journey, and at what point did you decide to give it your full attention?
Thank you for having me here today, Hope. I worked in several different industries before going full time with SheFly in college. I was a server and a bartender and worked as a glacier guide, which is where I thought of the idea for SheFly originally. After graduating from Middlebury College in Vermont, I worked as an English teacher. I was a Fulbright Fellow teaching at a business academy in the Czech Republic. And then after that, I worked in economic consulting for a couple years and ultimately went full time with SheFly Apparel about 8 months ago at the end of last summer. And I think for me, the jumping off point was knowing that I had invested in myself and gained a network and career skills that I could then bring back to the startup, to SheFly. And we participated in two accelerators last year, the Moose Jaw Outdoor Industry Accelerator in Colorado, and then the Mass Challenge Accelerator out of Boston. And we left each of those accelerators, one with a purchase order from the second largest outdoor retailer in the country, and two with the top cash prize. And I think those two achievements really signaled to me that it was time to go for it and see what we could do.
So tell us a little bit about your technology. What is the patented zipper technology?
So basically, there is a second zipper that begins at the base of the first zipper you're accustomed to using to get your pants on and off, and it extends all the way to the back of the pant. So we say number one or number two, SheFly's got you. There is a flap on the inside that ensures that it is comfortable, as well as a flap on the outside that ensures it's discreet. And so our patents deal with all of those components.
All right, thank you, Georgia Grace. And so let's meet the other member of our panel today, Sita. Sita, Black Enterprise Magazine indicated that you were the first African American woman to hold three patents, with a fourth pending for a natural hair accessory. In our prep meetings, I was fascinated to learn that there are different hair languages for different ethnicities regarding curly hair. Could you take us through your inspiration story, including the different hair languages that led you to create your product?
Yes, thank you, Holt, for having me here today. I started as a graphic designer, and that's what I went to school for. That's what I thought I was going to be. And at that, I was also a graphic designer at the time that I discovered this tool, the need for this tool. So the Puff Cuff is a hair clamp specifically designed for those with thick, curly, textured hair. And I had stopped chemically straightening my hair back in 2006 or so. And at that time, could not find anything that could accommodate the thickness and texture of my hair when I pulled it up without giving me a headache or hair damage. So I knew what the tool would do, how it would work, kind of what it would look like, but you just needed a little bit more help on trying to get it to an actual working product. And then in terms of the hair languages, once we got the product rolling out in social media and we started getting social media traction, I ended up finding out because originally when I thought the product would who would use the product, I immediately just assumed it was going to be people that look like me, African American women. But once I started getting more social proof and the word started spreading online, we realized that the puff cuff really takes the place of rubber bands. And no matter what your hair texture, no matter what your thickness, no matter what your length, everyone despises the rubber band. But we don't talk about our equal hate for it across color lines. So it'd be in different situations that I'd be necessarily not, because I was used to demonstrating at black hair shows. I was demonstrating at a hair show in New York, which was a professional beauty show. So it was just full of professional stylists. And at that time, they would come over to our booth. We were there as an emerging brand. They come over to our booth, and I would have women not of African American descent and men both come over and be like, "Oh, I get that. That I won't get the crimp with that." And I'm like, "Don't know what the crimp is, but okay." Then they would tell me, "Well, the crimp is when you put your hair up in a ponytail and it's wet, you put that rubber band around it, and then once you're like done from the gym or whatever and your hair is dry, you take that elastic band off and you have that big ring around your hair where it's dented in." And I'm like, "I get it. I know exactly what you're talking about, but black women don't experience that because once our hair is up, it's up for the rest of the day, wet, dry, or indifferent." So it's just being able to understand that, you have to listen to the customer need and be able to decipher and figure out and translate that, oh, okay, we've all got the same problem. We just call it different things.
So tell us about the Puff Cup. How did you address those different problems, and what did you develop?
So this is the puff cuff here. This is one of 5 sizes that we have. So what I discovered is basically all the styling tools out in the market right now were prior to the puff cuff, I should say, were designed to give thin hair bulk. So in other words, it would take, the thin strands, gather them all together, and then cinch them down to where it would give them bulk. Basically, people with textured curly hair, we already have the bulk. We just need something to hold our hair in place and not cinch it. So I figured if I could come up with a clip or apparatus that would work with the density and texture of my hair, it would not cause me to have a headache and not cause me to have hair damage. So basically, the way it works is you gather your hair first, you clip the puff cuff around, and then the density and the thickness of your hair push outward on the clip, which keeps the hooks closed. So in essence, it's just holding the hair in place. So I'm sorry, I forgot the second question.
No problem. And so, for those who had the other type of curly hair, right?
Mhm.
The crimp. What was it? What was the phrase that you used?
The crimp, they would it would put the
Yes,
crimp in their hair. So it's the
right.
same
How did you
thing.
address that issue? So the design addressed that issue as well.
So those usually people who have the crimp or suffer from the hashtag the crimp. Those are people with thinner, silkier textures. So what we did was all of our puff cuffs operate the same. They never cinch down. They just hold the hair in place. But we came up with smaller sizes. So basically the size of your ponytail, when you gather it, your ponytail or puff, the size of your fist at the base of your ponytail between your scalp and your hair, that's kind of the size of the puff cuff that you would need. So basically it's that it's a sizing issue of the puff cuff. And we have our original puff cuff is 5 inches, and our smallest puff cuff, which is called the teeny, is 1.5 inches in diameter. But then we also found that we have people with bone straight hair or maybe some of a wave, some that equally again despise a rubber band. But because the way the teeth are made, because the way the teeth, I just jumped way all the way across the table. The way the teeth are made on the puff cuff, the teeth are spaced out. So what we're doing now, the third patent that I have, the teeth are actually covered in silicone. So it kind of gives it more of a grip. So it'll do the same thing, but it'll lock into the silkier textures and not slide out. So that's how we're addressing the issues.
And I love that idea because for me, curly hair is not the issue. I do have
Mhm.
very silky hairs, and I do tell people that I have two hairstyles, straight and straighter. And so that sounds like a product that will work really well and solve the problem for me. So,
Exactly.
Georgia Grace, I'm going to go back to you and talk to you a little bit about your IP journey because you did get your zipper technology patented. Can you describe your IP journey for us on how you went from the innovative idea from your dorm room to owning numerous design and utility patents?
Sure. In the early days in college, we almost functioned as more of a service than a product because, we hadn't designed our own pair of pants from head to toe. But once the word started to spread, people were really interested in testing the functionality. And that helped us prove the concept out a lot. So professors and friends and people in town would come to me and say, "Hey, can you throw your zipper into my cross country ski pants or my pajamas or whatever random article of bottom clothing?" And I would say, "Sure, I don't know how it's gonna look, but I can put one in there." And we did, and that helped us kind of iterate on our first prototypes of our own. And from there, we took those designs, which again still looked pretty horrendous, but at least worked, to local seamstresses, and they helped us build out the design, get it a little bit more refined. From there, we took those designs and patterns to a tech pack designer. And a tech pack designer is someone who essentially makes the blueprint for an article of clothing. So there's drawings, there's very specific measurements. You do your scaling for sizes. We have quite a few. We do 00 to 22. And that allows you to then send that blueprint to a factory and get your initial samples. That process took several years for us. I think we've gone through over 70 different iterations of the current pair of pants. And we opted for provisional patents at the beginning because we were strapped for cash. And so those are a bit cheaper and allow you to buy time to really dial in on exactly which components of your design you'll be patenting. And then we did our first launch through a crowdfunding campaign in 2019 on iFund Women. We more than tripled our goal, and that was kind of that's how we got the pre-sales and revenue to pay for our first production run. And now today we have design patents in 30 different countries, and we're pending for a utility in another 30 countries, and are working on additional patents that accompany the R&D we've done on all the products coming down the line. So leggings in the fall, shorts next spring, and any other article of clothing you can imagine, I guarantee we have a design for it in the works.
That's fantastic. And Sita, similar question for you on your IP journey. Could you take us through your story on obtaining one granted utility patent and two design patents and one pending patent application?
Yes. So in the beginning, when I made the puff cuff and designed the puff cuff, I really did not, um, hadn't really had the whole idea of patenting anything in my mind. I actually, at that time, I worked at a community college in their marketing department because I'm a graphic designer by career prior to this life. And I happened to be talking to a couple of the adjunct professors about my idea, and there was one of the professors that looked at it, and he was an engineering professor, and believe he was a CAD engineer. Um, he looked at it and he was like, "You're going to be rich. You need to protect yourself." And I was like, "Okay, I just thought I was going to sell these at craft shows on the weekend." He was like, "No, you've really got a really good idea there." And he even was like, I think it's going to have more applications than what you think it's going to have. And I'm like, "Oh, okay." So at that time, my big mantra of that time was I, I didn't know what I didn't know. So it literally was digging and diving into my network and trying to find a patent attorney that would help me out. And I was able to, through those professors that I mentioned previously, find my patent attorney and was able to apply for that first patent. I didn't do the provisional patent journey. I did the utility first, and then we got the design second, I believe. And one of those, I can't remember exactly, but one was the process was super smooth. The second, not so much. We had a lot of pushback and a lot of appealing trying to get the second patent pass for the same design. And then also my jealousy of Georgia is I had no idea about international patents. And I wish I had that knowledge at that time, but unfortunately I didn't, which also has opened me up to a lot of knockoffs, kind of steadily trying to fight those making versions of the Puff Cuff in different countries. So it's one of those things where, yeah, Patent 101, you guys need to create that class and make it curriculum of every entrepreneurial program that's out there now, because yeah, like you say, especially you don't know what you don't know, and especially if you're not going with the traditional entrepreneurial journey where you've got mentors and things that are helping you. I mean, literally, I was a graphic designer that was like, I just need a hair clamp. So, I didn't have that. I didn't have that advice and that mentorship. It was a learn as you go situation for me.
And just to give a plug for USPTO, we do have a lot of Patents 101 classes. And so for anyone who is listening on here, we do provide on a regular basis a path to a patent class, and just really taking you step by step on your IP journey through patents as well as trademarks as well. And so all of that information, if you want to find out more information about classes like that, you can go to our website under the events page under www.uspto.gov. And so continuing on with you, Sita, in our prep meeting, one of the things that you mentioned was you really had to build up courage and be brave enough to go into business, because there was not a lot of people who looked like you, and you didn't have a lot of examples to go off of in building a business. So what pushed you over the edge, and what made you think you had an idea that would benefit others, and how did you first act upon that?
Okay, so I come from a family of small business owners. At that time, I didn't know that they were called small business owners when I was little. It was just they weren't working at a job, they were working for themselves. I think what the lack, so I had I had examples of working for yourself, but what I didn't have examples of were successful, profitable businesses. And that's where the difference came from, because the difference is I came from, yeah, my uncle's a barber, and guess what? He died being a barber right there at the stool. It's like you don't ever you work forever. You work till you die. You don't work to the point where you become successful, and either you choose a new journey that you're reaping the benefits of the successes that you've had with your business. So that was the difference. And then for me, I was like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to have to do what I'm doing until, my body breaks down or whatever, and I can't do it anymore. I want to have a successful business to where I'm leaving either some type of legacy, or I'm able to pay it forward in some type of way. So what I did, actually, I had to stop thinking about the big picture. I literally, and I'm so glad I didn't, because I would have scared myself to death. I literally took this opportunity as take it a moment at a time. My saying is, order the big plate, take small bites, drink plenty of water so you don't get acid reflux. Otherwise, you will get totally overwhelmed. You have to and sometimes it's great to not have to think of, well, this is my version of success. My success came as a journey, and it was like, okay, if I did this, if I survived this, then I should be able to do that. So let me go to the next step. We can, and the more that you're in this, and the longer that you're in this, longer you're in it, you become aware of people look at you in a different way. You might not think of yourself as successful, but they're looking at you like, wow, you've done this, this, and this, where most entrepreneurs is like, well, that was just last week. That's just part of the journey. So that's the encouragement that keeps me going. And also being I hate, not that I hate the word, but I think it's kind of self-righteous a little bit, being a beacon for other people that look like me to say, look, you can do this. It ain't easy. It's not an add water and stir type of thing. But if you have the passion and if you have the stick to itiveness, it can be done. And I'm here to let you know the mistakes you don't have to make. Because I think that's a big part of it is us as African Americans, we don't have those examples readily available of someone who's walked this journey before you. A lot of us in 2022 are still, I'm the first, and it's like, okay, we've been on this planet for how many years, but I'm now in this century the first. I'm the first to have three patents as a Black woman. It's like, it's great, but at the same time, how many other Black women invented something, but they didn't get to the point of either being recognized for their patents being actually applied and recognized, or they just didn't apply and had their idea stolen or something like that. So that's when I say we didn't have the examples. It's foreign for us, but still, if you have the strength and the tenacity and realize, you know what, God will put in the right people in your path in order to get you there. If it's meant for you, then there's no reason to be afraid.
And I love the fact that you are the beacon or the role model that others can follow. And I love the fact that we're featuring you for that very reason, to be that beacon and that particular role model. So Georgia Grace, you were actually fairly young when you thought of your idea. In fact, you were still in college, and I found it very interesting that you thought of this idea because of something you were doing work-wise in college. So can you tell us a little bit more about that? And then what were your challenges in getting started that you faced that you wish you knew and when you were starting this entrepreneurship journey?
Well, maybe if I'd had Sita as a mentor, I wouldn't have had any challenges. Yeah, so the idea for She Fly came from a summer I spent glacier guiding on the Mendenhall Glacier in Alaska. And I was usually the only, if not one of the only female guides on the glacier each day, 8 to 12 hours a day up on the ice. And in comparison to the male guides who could unzip, go whenever, wherever, I found myself having to trek across the glacier, avoiding crevasses until I could find a spot with enough privacy from tourists and helicopters overhead and whatever else. Completely remove 3 to 4 layers in freezing temperatures, do my thing, put it all back on, and hike back to work. And that process is a huge waste of time, a huge waste of energy, and something that always left me feeling cold for hours after, to the point where I started dehydrating myself, which is not a great idea when you're a guide who's responsible for other people and need to be reaching your peak athletic performance outside, but unfortunately is not an uncommon story among women in the outdoors. In fact, 2 out of 3 women have had a bathroom accident outside in the past year, it blows my mind that we have grown women walking around peeing on themselves because they can't find privacy, their gear doesn't work, etc. Like, that's ridiculous. And I'd say the response we get most frequently is, yeah, we can't believe you're the first people to think of this. And my response is always, I'm not the first person to think of this. There are so many women who have come before me who have done DIY solutions or had small businesses that tried to do this and were unable to scale it because they were in male dominated industries, or it was because before there was, before the age when you could reach the consumer directly online like we can now, and you instead had to convince a male store owner to stock a product that was super taboo. They didn't have a lot of female customers coming in. So there's a lot of barriers that I faced and that a lot of small entrepreneurs faced. I grew up in the Appalachian Mountains and of Western Maryland, and I think similar to Sita, I'd seen small businesses because every business I interacted with growing up was not a chain, it was owned by an individual. But I didn't know anyone who was the capital E entrepreneur, the kind of Steve Jobs narrative where you've dropped out of college and raised venture capital. And I didn't know anything about that and did struggle and still do struggle with imposter syndrome all the time. And I think the way to combat that is with vulnerability, like saying when you don't know and being willing to ask questions when you don't know. And then the knowledge piece, I think also is really helpful for combating that. And so I took a 4-week entrepreneurship class in college during a winter semester, and that's what gave me the resources and the time and the space to learn how to be a business owner, or at least how to have a business plan, if nothing else. I think the main challenges that I faced are what a lot of female entrepreneurs face, or minorities of any kind face, which the first one is always capital. For women entrepreneurs, we're starting businesses at almost 5 times the national average, but the percentage of us that own patents or intellectual property of any kind is so far beneath that. It's not proportional. And I think a huge part of that is how much it costs to do it. In the early days, we were spending over 50% of revenue on securing IP, and that's just securing IP. That's not even being able to defend the IP if you do have someone who tries to rip you off. So it's kind of this hamster wheel of cash that doesn't stop coming. That's one thing. The knowledge involved in obtaining intellectual property is also extremely niche, which is why you usually need a lawyer to do it. And it's really hard to teach yourself. So I'd say that's another barrier. I think it's great that the USPTO is coming out with more resources now, but I couldn't find a single one that was useful to me at the point in time when we were pursuing a lot of our initial intellectual property. And then I think the last piece is exactly what Sita mentioned. It was representation. I didn't have anyone in my network that I could talk to who was a female business owner who had patented something in apparel. It was always middle-aged white men in tech or engineering, and they gave helpful advice, but it wasn't always relevant to where I was in my life or the industry I was trying to break into. And so those 3 barriers, I would say, are the main things that are hard to becoming an entrepreneur and to obtaining intellectual property.
All right. So thank you, Georgia, Grace, and I'm glad that we're featuring you as well, so that others can follow in your journey and your path as well as a role model. So touching on funding, because that was something that you mentioned, I'm going to go back to Sita because one of the number one questions that many entrepreneurs ask is, how do I get money to start my business? So how did you fund your idea and where did you turn for your support?
So that's still something I'm learning to do, to tell you the truth. When I first started my business, I had no clue how much money this would be required. And at that time, I was only trying to concentrate on paying for my initial tooling or the mold. I was able to, I applied at banks, traditional financial institutions, and I heard no in every way. I think every language, every way possible that they could say the word no. And I ended up getting a loan actually from a non-for-profit at that time that specifically lended to underserved communities, which the name of the organization is called Axiom. So they gave me my first $16,000 loan, which paid for almost all of my tooling. So from there, actually, what I did is I took a full-time job. I took a full-time job in order to fund the business. And we borrowed off of our life insurance. We borrowed off of our 401k. I ruined my credit score, all the above in order to get this business going. I didn't even know that it was venture capital funding was like okay, let me go to the dictionary and find out what that means. Because I had no clue that that was even a thing, let alone a thing that is given to or even considered being given to product-based businesses. So as time went on, and you hear all of all the tech funding, oh, I got this guy or this company came up with some idea of how to make an app that keeps track of your dog during the day and read what each bark sounds like. He got $4 million in venture capitalist fund. And I'm like, funds. And I'm like, you know what? I've actually sold so many of these pieces. I have a 5-star rating on Amazon, but no one is giving me any money. I've been in the black since the beginning of the company, but no one was at my door knocking on it, being like, you know what, I've got 100 grand that you can take and put it into the business. So it was a very elusive thing. And I'll just be completely transparent and probably, a little blunt. I did not get any money until the pandemic. It was Uncle Joe and Aunt Cam that gave me the 6-figure loans that were necessary to get us a footing on where we can go with this product and with this business. Granted, I have to pay, everybody's got to pay it back in one way or another, but then it came down to, I still feel it's one of those things there just wasn't the opportunity to get the level of money or the amount of money to take your business to the next level. That was not a thing until the past 2 years with for people that look like me, until all of the social unrest and the pandemic and all that boiling point that we were at in the last couple of years, that opened up a lot of opportunity for Puff Cuff that just was not existent for us. Not that it just wasn't. And when I say not existence for us, it was non-existent emphasis on for us. So going forward, now that we have situations like this where I'm getting more exposure, being able to tell the story, people are like, wow, you've done what you've done on raising no money. And it's like, we have raised some, but we've done it through crowdsourcing. It's like, okay, everybody, let's wrangle up all our aunts, cousins, and cousins, and who knows who. And then we promised to give you five to 10 Puff Cuffs if you invest $100, stuff like that. That's what we've been able to work with. But still, those types of, I'm grateful for them, but those types of resources are not what's going to take you where you need to go. And that's where we're at right now. But the flip side to that is I still own 100% of my company. So, I mean, there is, it's a double-edged sword. So now we are entertaining the fact of taking on some venture capitalist money or angel funding or that, but I'm in a different place. I am seen of more value now than I was before, even though I felt I was valuable before and the company was valuable before. But, we've got more years, we've got more street cred, and we know more people. So, and I also think that if I had have gotten the money then, I wasn't ready. I needed to experience these past 8 to 9 years in order to know how to spend whatever monies that we have. Plus, I did the same thing. I did not think that, like what Georgia was saying, I had to educate myself on running a business, because that was not from, I thought I was going to be a freelancer and a contractor for the rest of my days before starting this. So I would say in 2020, that's when the company really started getting traction. And I was like, this is growing pretty fast. And I know I am not capable of and equipped to take this company where it needs to go or where it can go. So I dived into growing my network and becoming more educated on how to run a business. So I dove into every entrepreneurial cohort I could find. So that's another thing. All cohorts are not made equal, but I can tell you which ones, because most education out there now is for startups and ideas, and not people who have some years under their belt that need to get to the next level. There's only, I would say, a handful of those. And thank God I found those, but I went to one with Cornell and the one that I did with Babson and Goldman Sachs just recently. Those were priceless. One was specifically for women entrepreneurs, which taught me that, yeah, you're going to get a no just because of who you are, but realize that, accept it, and move on until you get your yes. You're not imagining things. It is because you are a woman in a male-driven society that certain opportunities are they're just not going to give them to you. But someone will eventually. But this is how you navigate to get to those opportunities, to have those doors open. The Goldman Sachs, and not to plug them, but the Goldman Sachs 10K, 10,000 small businesses, that was just totally next level on all of knowing your numbers and knowing your data. I'm an artist. I do not speak numbers, but I couldn't let that be a crutch. I had to, I say, put my big girl pants on and get in my data, get in my dashboards, get in my numbers to truly understand where this business is and what it's going to take to get to the next level. So those two things are my resources.
That is great to know, and great things to for our listeners to know as well, as not all things are created equal, even in that space. And so it's great for them to know what works and what doesn't work. So, Georgia, turning to you, same question. Your funding structure was slightly different than Sita's, although you did work full-time as well before fully launching into the business and your company, SheFly. Can you tell us a little bit more about your journey on funding? Where did you turn, and at what point did you decide that your business had enough income for you to devote all your time into SheFly?
Well, I'll caveat that my business still does not have enough income for me to be full time. It's kind of more of a chicken and an egg where I realized, or a catch 22, where I realized that I needed to go full time in order to get the business to the next step. So, similar to what Sita was saying, we were out of startup mode and really needed to be able to make the jump into the next phase. And for us, those two accelerators I talked about really helped. Before that, and still currently, we're still pretty scrappy and do a lot of bootstrapping. So in college, I was working 2 to 3 jobs a semester, and putting whatever extra cash I had into going to Joann Fabrics to buy more fabrics and zippers, or going to Goodwill to experiment on a new type of pant. The other thing that we really went for a lot, and still do go for a lot, are pitch competitions. Those have been a great way to not only spread the word and build our network, but also win small sums of cash at a time. I remember the first pitch competition I did about a month after kind of making the SheFly business plan, and it was $250 cash. And that's what I used to pay the first seamstress that we worked with. And it's only $250, but if you win 4 of those in a year, that's enough to make multiple prototypes and get you to the next stage. So there was a lot of that. We did get very lucky in that we ended up with a dorm room fund safe investment. And that was while we were still in college, and we were, sleeping on friends' couches to drive to wherever to give this pitch to have a shot at this sum of money that was set aside for college students who were starting businesses. So that helped. But the big thing that really got us off the ground initially was that crowdfunding campaign that I mentioned. I Fund Women is a great resource. They have blown up since the pandemic. And the key there, what gives them a leg up over a platform like Kickstarter, is that it's all women-owned brands. So we were able to speak directly to the consumers we wanted to reach. And then they have a high emphasis on mentorship and education. So I, again, invested, I don't know, a couple $100s up front to learn about the strategy behind crowdfunding before I actually did it. And that was another educational piece of just like teaching yourself how to do it, investing in your own education. Since then, we have tried to diversify our funding stream. So being a inventory-based business, it means cash flow is really difficult because you're placing huge purchase orders for $250,000 at a set time, and you have to have all of that cash at once. And then you don't make that money back until product arrives 8 months later, and you slowly sell through it. And so for that reason, we've had to also turn to loans. We have relocation incentives from our new headquarters in Colorado. And then we did a private fundraising round recently, a seed round from a mix of VCs, angels, and family offices. And so that was a completely new experience. Definitely dove in headfirst, not knowing a lot. And I'm glad that we did it at this point after I'd gone full time, as opposed to similar to what Sita said. I think if I'd tried to go for that amount of money while I was still part time, it would not have worked out, and we would have gotten a lot more no's. But yeah, that's been the general overview. Um, and I think that also similar to what Sita said, that the pandemic did create, I mean, it put a lot of businesses out of business. And I mean, for us, we lost a third of our first manufacturing run because our factory went out of business overnight, like sold the machines. We lost tens of thousands of dollars of fabric, of hardware, everything. But because we hadn't gone full time yet, we were able to pivot. Like that wasn't my income at all. Um, and I think that we've seen a rise of customer education in terms of being more willing to pay for things several months in advance, kind of combating the Amazon model that's been created with next day delivery. So pre-sales are a great way to help small businesses. And that's what we just launched pre-sales for the first time in 2 years again on our site. And there are a lot more people who understand that model more now than they did previously. And I think that's also why we've seen like GoFundMe essentially become like a third branch of government, is that people have realized you can build communities around ideas and around products and around helping each other out. Um, and that's definitely something that SheFly has been able to take advantage of and has benefited from.
So both of you have mentioned that you had to kind of learn a little bit about funding models. What does it mean? The difference between a venture capitalist, angel fund, and all of that. Um, do you have any suggestions on resources on how did you learn, and where can those who are listening also learn about that as well? And so let's start with Sita and then go to Georgia Grace with that question.
I would say the best resources for me it's been being involved in different cohorts that are sponsored by different financial institutions, because they're very, very well-rounded in terms of not just what you have to do to get your business together, but what you have to do, how your numbers have to be right, and how you, not right, but how you have to know your numbers in order to present your numbers, in order to be able to present them to justify getting any type of financing or this or that. So Babson College, which I had not even heard of Babson College. And you guys aren't shaking your head like you guys know what Babson College is. Well, Babson College, I had never heard of it before, but it's the #1 entrepreneurial university in the United States, and I think like the globe. But it's in, I want to say, I'm gonna lie. I don't want to say where it's at because I will be lying because I don't know for sure. But Babson College is everything entrepreneurship, they have it, and they've done a really good job of adapting through the pandemic and making everything virtual. So even if it's just a certificate or whatever that you need in a certain niche of your business, whether it be marketing, whether it be, how to understand a balance sheet and a profit and loss statement, all of that, you don't have to dedicate a whole like 6 months of your life in order to just fill in the gaps. So Babson College is definitely one. Like I said, Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses is a extremely, it's a deep dive, and you're doing it with almost 200 or more other small businesses, but in all different industries. But it is a rigorous program. It's 3 months long. They basically said at the beginning, you're going to need to clone yourself because you will be missing in action. I didn't believe them, so I did feel by the time I finished, I was having nightmares like I was in college again, and I was about to graduate, and I found out there was one class I forgot to take. So it is, but it is so worth it on the back end because of the camaraderie that comes out of it. And they make sure you actually do graduate and get a certificate from this, but they make sure you know exactly where you're at and what steps you need to take to get to the next level. And then the third one that I went through with Cornell was sponsored by Bank of America. And they have different levels of certificates that you can get, but they're a little bit lengthier, but they are so worth it. And every single one of them I did for free. It was either applying for something. I say with the get as much free as you can between even like my whole learning about trademarking and not patenting but copywriting and all of that. It was USPTO website. What videos are there that I can look at and watch for free? SBDC, SCORE, the SBA, all of that. Do free. Don't let anybody charge you until it's something that you cannot find for free.
And over to you, Georgia Grace. Where did you go to find information about funding and learning about all of these different funding models?
So many places. A lot of them are found on Google. Middlebury College, where I went, has a great social entrepreneurship program, and so that's where I took the 4-week class. Had I not taken that class, I doubt I ever would have turned SheFly into a business. So, for undergrads, I'd say be looking at small liberal art colleges like that have programs. Middlebury also offers a program called Mid-Core over the summer. And that teaches a lot of problem solving and business skills that got me in the mindset, I think, to be able to create something like SheFly. For funding specifically, I Fund Women, like I mentioned, definitely check it out. I have found that co-working spaces tend to be great resources for both finding community, finding financial resources, and finding education. So in college, I worked out of a college-owned building called the Old Stone Mill, where I had an office and a sewing machine for SheFly. Then after graduating, I worked out of the Vermont Center for Emerging Technologies in Burlington, which is another co-working space. We're currently headquartered in Ice Lab in Gunnison, Colorado, which is another co-working space. I think startups are so risky, and the more you can anchor yourself to a community so you won't fall through the cracks, the better off you'll be. So I know they kind of went out of fashion during the pandemic, but I'm a huge advocate for co-working spaces, maybe not WeWork. The name of the fund we got money from was called the Dorm Room Fund. That's backed by First Round Capital. And then the 2 accelerators I mentioned, the Moose Jaw Outdoor Industry Accelerator and the Mass Challenge Accelerator, have been phenomenal resources. And we chose those 2 because, similar to what Sita said, they did not take equity, they did not cost money. Granted, you don't get paid to be in them, and it takes a significant amount of your time, which is why I stayed full time for so long before making the jump to SheFly. But I think they're definitely worth it and allow you to expedite the process of figuring out a lot of this, or can introduce you to someone who can help you. And there's been so many other resources, but those are the ones that come to mind. For fundraising, I also read Venture Deals. I think the subtitle is like Be Smarter Than Your Lawyer and Your Venture Capitalist, and that helped me a lot reading that book. I would definitely recommend it.
All right, thank you. I'm going to jump back to IP a little bit. And I know, Georgia Grace, you had mentioned that IP and ownership in IP did help you and benefit your business. In fact, it provided you some street cred. Can you talk a little bit more about that and how ownership of IP has helped you in your business?
Yeah. Oh, one more resource I wanted to mention was the USPTO. We actually scheduled a one-on-one with Hope following one of the accelerators, and I found everyone at the office extremely available and friendly and willing to share resources. There's a PowerPoint presentation y'all shared with us that I still refer back to when we're filing new patents. So also check that out. Intellectual property for SheFly has, I mean, I don't want to say it's been everything, but it's been a lot of things. I think especially being a women-owned business that is focusing on something that's rather taboo. Unfortunately, this problem hasn't been properly addressed because it is so taboo. Having a patent is a big signal of legitimacy in this industry, not only to customers who are like, okay, this is a top-end product. If it's been able to achieve a couple patents, but also to investors, ears always perk up. Or people, you can tell people pay attention more during a pitch when you mention that you have patents. So it's been helpful for that. In terms of our mission, we've always wanted to make this technology as available to as many different people and as many different applications as possible. And patents have been a great way to be able to do that because we can license our technology out to every other brand, product imaginable, in a way that we couldn't if we didn't have protection over those ideas. And so patents have allowed us to establish an additional revenue stream, that hopefully will be a lot more profitable and exponential than an apparel-based business would be otherwise. And yeah, those are the two main ways I would say that the patents have legitimized things for us.
And Sita, I know that you mentioned earlier in our conversation today that while you were at the community college, one of the professors indicated to you that you needed to protect yourself. And so that's how you ended up in securing your IP and your patents in particular. And so, how have you leveraged your IP, and how have you been building your brand now that you have trademarks as well as patents?
So I would really say that I can answer that in two ways. It's piggybacking on what Georgia is saying, giving that legitimacy that this is a real deal. This is not just something, this is not a fly by night, operation. But, and then that it also being a female, um, a Black woman, it also gives more, it's sad to say, but it gives more legitimacy to what I'm doing. I don't have to have my husband run lead on me in order for me to be taken serious in some of the different situations that I'm in and the conversations that I'm in. Um, I've actually probably think I've leaned more on my trademarks than my patents in terms of time, because this Puff Cuff is now, the people that do know it, we started with more of a social media following. We didn't put a whole lot into marketing. So I was really putting my brand out there and the name out there, just like one of those things in marketing, that two-syllable word, She Fly and Puff Cuff, they're easy to remember. So, and they roll out of the mouth really, really easily. So it was really protecting that part of the brand and having that social proof so the brand could pretty much reinforce, or not reinforce, that would be forefront. So my patent could take a little bit more of a back seat, because there is, from my understanding, it's easier. I was easy because I missed the window to get my patent established in globally. I was able to get my trademark. I was able to trademark my logo and my name in different countries, and at a point where I could afford to do that also. So we have a lot of brand recognition globally and brand loyalty. So even if there are knockoffs out there, which they're knocking off my patent and infringing on my patent, usually it's a fan that will be like, this is what I saw. Do you know that this happened? Do you want me to go speak to them? It's like, no, we've got it. But it's that brand loyalty, and that's a big part of me representing the brand too, and then feeling our customers and fans feeling part of the community, part of the tribe, that has been very successful for us, and we've been able to reap a lot of benefits from that. So going back to patent infringement, because there's no patent police, and protecting your patent is extremely, extremely expensive. Case in point, there was an infringing product coming into the United States from the East that was a total infringement. Even using my pictures, they called it a puff ringlet. And even put a picture of me on, the girl on the packaging looks like me. And it has the nerve to say patent pending on it. So yes, wow. And it was like, okay, but we put on, put in a claim, and we had to do a lot of the legwork research ourselves because we couldn't afford for our attorney to be doing, all of the internet crawling and all of that to try and see where it was coming from. But literally, me getting on the phone, pretending to be somebody wanting to buy the puff cuff in bulk from one of these people that were knocking or buying the knockoffs, and getting the name of the distributor that was bringing it in from the East. This, I love Law and Order, so I enjoyed doing it, but it took me to do that. And then in the end, we ended up spending almost $110,000 in legal fees to only get a $13,000 settlement and a promise to stop from the distributor that I put Georgia's face in her hand. But it took that experience to say, okay, I have the patent, but I can't afford to keep protecting it. I've got to push my brand loyalty. I've got to if I had taken that money and invested it, that $100,000, and invested it in getting my product further out into the world from us, that would have beat that would have been a way greater, return than giving that $100,000 to my IP attorney only for, they did what they could do. But what ended up happening is that distributor that we found out that was importing it, they turned the claim, which there's only like 2 that import all of the beauty products into the United States. So you can imagine how much money they have. So what they did is they turned the claim over to their insurance, and their insurance then got, some 70-year-old lawyer to just keep on appealing and appealing and appealing. And you know what? Well, this word wasn't spelled right on the contract. You need to send us another version. So they were just eating up the fees, and they knew we couldn't afford it. So we had to just, call it. But that's now one of those experiences that is, yes, you can protect yourself, but you got to go eyes wide open. The patent protects you so much, but if somebody really wants to knock you off, they're going to do it regardless. They're going to do it. It's just a matter of, do you have more of a brand presence, and do you have a better story that people will align with you more than they'll align with those other evil people?
So Georgia, Grace, I remember in our discussions, you talked a lot about, hey, how can we save money in IP protection? And so similar to what Sita was saying, that, sometimes you got to do some things yourself. What were some things and strategies that you did in order to save some of the costs with patent filings? And in particular, especially since you have a worldwide portfolio, which can be very expensive, at what point in time did you say, hey, I need to also protect myself worldwide and other countries in addition to the United States?
For us, we realized that about a third of the people on the 6,000 person wait list we established while we had no inventory, they were international. And so I was like, okay, there is a demand for this internationally. The product is going to find itself in these countries anyway. We might as well try to be protected there. So we opted for countries where we knew we had customers. We also prioritized countries where we were manufacturing or sourcing materials from, because those are the people who are seeing the tech pack and every single detail of the product. We'll see how useful that ends up being. Sita has scared me sitting over here, but she's not the first person that I've heard stories like this from. And so, yeah, I'd say it was like the customers and having a really global supply chain are the 2 things that encouraged us to really go for those international patents. Now, we had to turn plenty down. There's a lot of other countries where I would feel better if we were protected, but cost is always the limiting factor. And so we are where we are for now. The things that we do internally to have more of a handle on how much gets spent on intellectual property is we start by trying to draft everything ourselves. So if we want to trademark a new tagline, for example, we're the ones doing the trademark search. We'll have a lawyer verify it after, but we do the initial legwork. We're working on a patent right now, and we're the ones who do take the first stab at all the drawings. They're terrible, but they get you to further down the line, so that someone can quickly, clean them up instead of starting from the very beginning with that process. Um, I'd say those are the two main things. We also sometimes tell our lawyers, hey, we can't afford more than an hour's worth of work on this at a time. So can you just give us the best you can do? And those are kind of the strategies that we're still relying on, even given all the progress that we've had.
Hey,
And
Hope, can
Sita,
I
did you
say
have
what?
something to add? Yeah.
Yeah, yes, I did. I do. Actually, I think they found us. It's a company called Red Points, and they have a new technology where they crawl the web, and they basically are the IP kind of bodyguards. They're not the police, but they're the bodyguards. And what they'll do is they will actually they crawl the web for all of our trademarks, all of our patents, and all of our imagery that we have copyrighted. And what they'll do is they pull it all into a portal, and they just make like a hierarchy of cases. And I just go in and say, is this something that's an infringement? Are they using our brand name? Does this product look like it might be infringing on it? And I just click off yes or no, and then they actually go and contact wherever that source is to have them pull it down. So that has been one, they've been a saving grace, but because there's been some stuff that we are like, what? There's been Amazon listings that'll be for a bar of soap, but will put Puff Cuff in the name just to try and get the clicks away from my product. And it's like, that has nothing to do with. So the stuff that has, like, if they could just use their powers for good instead of evil, just how much work could be done. But so Red Points, and they are absolutely awesome, and it's very affordable. They charge me a flat rate every month, and we've been with them for about 2 years now, and they have caught stuff that I would have never had the bandwidth to even find.
So, um, so let's talk a little bit about inspiration and who do you look for inspiration, and who and or what do you look for inspiration on moving forward your particular business? Sita, do you have anyone that you particularly look to inspire? I know that you're already a role model out there, and so, but who do you look to inspire you as you are on your journey through your business?
Um, of course, there's going to be several women, female, business gurus. The person who I really was inspired by hearing her story was Sarah Blakely of Spanx. That was the one that was like, she seems tangible. Her story seems tangible to me. It was like, grassroots, in her basement or one bedroom apartment, doing whatever. It was like she made her story relatable, and it was very close to heart, because I think a lot of us, like Georgia said earlier, there's a lot of us who have come with basically our ideas are workarounds for issues that are not being addressed. And like Georgia said, I know I'm not the first one to think of this, but it's like I was inspired to take it to the next level because I saw somebody else do it. And she was one of those people. Now, granted, when I sell my company, I'm going to do more for my employees and give them a trip. But I pray what they really got, she didn't put in the media publicly. But that's Sarah Blakely would be mine for now.
All right. What about you, Georgia Grace? Who do you find inspiration from?
There are so many specific people I could mention. Yeah, we've have an incredible community of mentors that we've amassed through accelerators and beginning in college, who we always turn to for advice or cheerleading. My team, the She Fly team, inspires me every single day, the women I work with. Um, I honestly think I draw the most inspiration from customer interactions, and in-person events, and people emailing, like the random emails we get about how this pair of pants made this co-ed backpacking trip so much more enjoyable, or from the female bridge inspector who's the rope lead on her team, and she's now literally making more money because she's working more hours because she's not spending over an hour a day using the bathroom in a 40-pound harness on a bridge. Um, those are the stories that keep me feeling inspired and like it's worth all of the hardships you've heard today to keep going. Yeah.
I'm gonna ditto that too. What Georgia said is like just bringing me back to yes, that is exactly it. Sarah Blakely is definitely where I want to be one day, but what keeps me going literally is when I hear those customer testimonials. And because of COVID, we're not doing that. We didn't do in-person events for 2 years. Now I'm longing to get back because it would be that I would see anywhere from a 2-year-old girl or 3-year-old girl who is able to have her puffs in and she likes the way she looks in the mirror, to the 66-year-old seasoned woman who says, I never liked my hair before until now because my hair was such a part of so much residue in my past and difficulty relationship between me and my mother. We just don't know how much hair plays into our story, but I 100% agree. It's those customer testimonials, and like I said, and like Georgia said, the team that I have, we've had more turnover lately because of just people being in different places in their lives, and we can understand that this pandemic has changed people's trajectories, which is just totally fine. But I know I would not be able to do it without my husband, my team, because my thing is I know I don't do everything well, and I don't want to do everything well. I just want to do what I do well and keep massaging that. But yeah, I'm gonna piggyback on that one.
So let me ask you all another question because both of you have very creative names for your companies. And so tell me a little bit of where you came up with your name, and how do you promote your brand, and where are your products available now? And so I'm going to start with Georgia Grace.
I knew I wanted a 2-syllable name that was easy to remember and communicated what the product was and who it was for in the same word. And so that is how She Fly came about. I do remember brainstorming names with friends and family. I remember being on a hike with my brother and we were just spitting around words, and at one point he was like, "I've got it." And I was like, "Okay, what is it?" And he was like, "Unzip her." I was like, "Nope, do you wanna think about that for 5 more minutes maybe?" But it was a fun process to come up with. What I will say is that in our growth, we've realized that She Fly is not a representative name of everyone who can use this product or relates to this product or the company mission, and so we actually are gonna go through a rebrand, next spring. So we'll miss She Fly, but I think something better is on the horizon on that front. Um, Remind me what part 2 of your question was?
How are you promoting your brand, and where are your products now?
Yeah, so you can pre-order pants. They arrive in May directly on our website, sheflyapparel.com. We will also be launching in all Moose Jaw Mountaineering stores nationwide this spring. So you can also go to any of their locations and find us there. And we have all the social media at She Fly Apparel, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, not so much, but we'll see.
And over to you, Sita, with Puff Cuff. How did you come up with your name, and where are your products available now?
Okay, so my name, all of my best inspiration happens in dreams or in the shower. So I actually came up with Puff Cuff in a dream, and it wasn't Like there was no, and this is my personality too. When I find something that I think is really, really great, I'm sticking with it. I don't even get opinions on it. I don't ask about it. I'm just like, this is what it is. So Puff Cuff came to me in a dream, and I was like, that's it. And I would say it to people, not really wanting them to say if they liked it or not, but just get their initial reaction. And everyone was always like, that's cool. I get it, because you're cuffing your puff. So that's where the Puff Cuff came from. In terms of keeping the name, I did use the USPTO website to see if anybody else had it or trademarked it, um, and found out that there was a couple iterations of it, but not in the same industry, and those were dead. They were dead they were dead trade not yeah, they were dead trademarks. And then I also went to social media to find out if anyone was using the hashtag or using the name. And there was one Instagram account that was using it, and they had a little bit of following, but they hadn't trademarked it, and they hadn't trademarked their logo. But it actually was a like handcuff system that you would cuff to your wrist and then cuff to your hookah pipe. So you wouldn't get lost, I guess, when you're in the hookah lounge, you'd know which pipe is yours. But anyway, so I went ahead and I was like, okay, and me being having the marketing background, I knew if I could get enough name recognition, that would cancel everybody else out. So that's what I did. I just started flooding social media, and in the very beginning, I ran a couple of, crowdsourcing campaigns when they were, kind of the new way of getting the community together to rally around your idea. And people just started, it was just something that like rang organically. So, and we built the first, we didn't really start doing marketing, like purposely putting money behind ads and anything like that until about 2017. So from 2014 to 2017, it was all social and organic. So our social media presence was very, very strong. And I made sure that the brand was represented by the customers who used it. So if you look at our social content, it's very much user generated organic content. And because I wanted everyone to see themselves in the brand. I didn't want to put unrealistic expectations and phony people and this, that, and I wanted people to see themselves in the brand so they could feel like that, like me, I'm a regular person, I have good, bad days, headaches, all that good stuff. And I wish I had Shi-Fi plants because I'm a track mom. I'm a track mom, and um, sitting out at those track meets all day or at those Foot Lockies all day. Like if I could just have my own little personal, in the back of my car, just because some of those bathrooms are disgusting. But anyway, right. So, and then also you can find Puff Cuffs at our website, puffcuff.com. And then we realize that there's several men now growing out their hair and growing out the facial hair. So we have another line that we are specifically marketing towards men, which is called PCM, which is called standing for the Puff Cuff Male, MALE. We're found on Amazon. We're found on Sally Beauty stores, sallybeauty.com. And on social media, every single channel you can think of, we are there. At the Puff Cuff is our name, or at PCM.
All right. So, so what now? Where do you think you're going to take your company now? And you've gone through a lot, and you've secured your IP, and you've gone through some of you, like Georgia Grace. You've gone through several rounds of funding. So where are you going to take your company now? And I'm going to start with Georgia Grace, actually.
Sky's the limit, I hope. We are growing the team in our new headquarters location here in Colorado. I hope that in the next 12 months, you will see us in some other retailers, small and large. And I also hope you see our tech as an ingredient in other people's existing products. Those are kind of the big picture plans for right now.
All right, and Sita, what about you?
So for us, we are getting our minds around preparing the company to sell within the next 6 years. Um, I will be the big 50 in a couple weeks, and I feel like, I enjoy everything that I do. I enjoy everything that I've built, but eventually I'm going to be ready to ride off into the sunset with my husband and just be able, my whole goal then is I don't want to have all of the concerns that I do with running a business. My thing then is to be able to make the money work for other businesses as well as be able to give back. That's my passion, is to do that. So I've got a 6-year goal, mainly because of the patents and the timing that we have on them. So that's my thing. And then I want to add one more. I want to ask Georgia Grace, man, if we had She-Fi pants when I had twin 4-year-olds, when I was trying to potty train, that's a drop the mic thing right there. Can you imagine? Because there's so many times where you cannot get, little boys don't hold stuff well, and you trying to get pants down and so that may be one application that will, like, the training pants, where they don't have to have their because they hate to wear underwear anyway. So if you had just the pants, they could, do their thing. Mommy could help them right quick, because we've ruined it. Remember, ruined many in a clothing because folks held it too long.
Yes, people always ask us when we're launching the men's line, when we're launching the kids line. I don't know if we can get all that done in the next 12 months, but we'll try our best.
All right. Well, we are towards the end of our program. And so thank you so much, Georgia Grace and Sita. I'm going to give y'all the final words. What advice would you give someone who wants to follow your path and turn their ideas into a business? And I'm going to start with you, Georgia Grace, and then go to Sita. So final words.
Have a sense of humor. You are going to get a lot of ridiculous responses and different ways of saying no, as Sita said, no matter what you're doing, and being able to laugh about it and recognize what you should take seriously, which is the people who support you, and what you should, brush off, I think is critical. I would also say track your progress. This is a really nebulous, abstract path. You're in the weeds every single day. Writing down your small wins and taking the time to celebrate them is what will keep you moving forward. And then finally, I think both Sita and I have paths that are not traditional for several different reasons. And I think having the courage to say, okay, just because my parents did it this way, or just because Steve Jobs did it this way, doesn't mean I have to do it this way. There's multiple ways to achieve whatever you want to do.
All right. And Sita, final words?
Final words for me would be, get out of your own way, but then at the same time, don't take yourself too seriously. An island of one always will be an island of one. Other islands aren't going to float up to help you. You have to get out of your silo and realize and own what you don't know, and be willing to work with those who do know what you need. And the other would be, especially if you're female, and especially if you're of color, there's going to be stuff that this is not available to you, and it doesn't have anything to do with you. As soon as you walked in the room, they made a decision, and you can't do anything about that. But again, there's someone else who will be there to help you, and who will stand in that gap for you. Don't let the no's upset you. They're always going to be there. And this is not, like I said, this is not a microwave thing or add water and stir. You've got to be in there and be very resilient, because this is not for the faint of heart, but definitely the highs are so worth it. They are so, so worth it. So just stick in there.
So, Sita, Georgia Grace, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your very inspirational stories. I learned a tremendous amount talking to you today. So, thank you so much for joining us.